going on, everybody? HQ Boys here with Screen Peek, which is our monthly video game book club podcast where we will all play a game and then we'll get down, sit together, and just, chat about it, see what's going on, how we're feeling about it. And this month, on episode 2, is going to be Ghost of Tsushima. And this is a Sucker Punch hit. It is a hit, although there are quite mixed feelings about it. And this is coming 6 years off the heels of their last hit, Infamous, which focused on a more urban landscape. Ghost of Tsushima brings us to feudal Japan with a much larger natural landscape, which I believe is a first for an open world game. Very unique and definitely brings a different experience.
So who wants to go first? Like I said in the pre-show, I think we all pretty much agree this isn't like our favorite game of the year. So I don't want to dunk on it too hard because I'm sure some people listening are going to love it, and I want to pay respects to the great parts of the game.
Yeah, sure.
There are some great parts.
No, I was going to say, overall, my experience with the game overall was positive, right? And when I first started the game, I really fell in love with it immediately. And I think that I want to stick to the positives here, but overall my experience with the game was just that it dropped off for me really hard. But things that I really loved about it right off the bat was the game is beautiful. The combat was at first very fun.
Yeah.
Super fun, beautiful. Loved the upgrade system at first. I felt like there was too much.
Yeah.
There was too many different skill trees and too many different things to level up and too many whatever. But finding the new armors was really cool. And then running into people and hearing their stories was really cool. And the world felt fairly lived in.
Yeah.
Even though a lot of it is open plain or forest or whatever, but you would come across, little hunting camps or fishing camps or farms and stuff and it felt very lived in, and I thought that was really cool, and just added to the whole feel of the game. I thought the vibe of the game felt really, really cool and really realized. You know what I mean? They had an idea and they executed that.
Yeah.
But like I said, there was a very big drop off for me on the game. But at first I was in love with it. We were talking about it when we first started playing. I was I crunched 26 hours into the game in 3 days.
Yeah.
Just could not stop playing it, which may have also been the downfall for me playing the game was maybe I did too much too fast.
Yeah.
But my initial thoughts on the game were that man, this is really fun. This feels good. The combat feels good. The world is fun to be in. And the story was interesting. Which I think at first, for the first 20 hours, had me keep playing and exploring and figuring out what was going on in the world. But that was my initial thoughts on what, the game was for me.
What about you, Nick?
So something that I took away from the game that I still really appreciate, and when I think about if I'm going to go back to the game, it is something that I look forward to feeling again, is the peacefulness of so much of the game, because the world is so beautiful, and the way that there's no HUD and you travel with the wind. And there's a lot of some of my favorite parts were going, and also, by the way, we haven't mentioned it, but spoilers for this game are going to be riddled through this thing. So if you haven't played it and you want to play it, stop and go and play it, because we're going to spoil some stuff. What I'm about to spoil is not story stuff, but something that I loved about the game were the foxholes and I forget what they're called, the temples or shrines, whatever.
Shrines,
whatever,
and then there's the
and the lighthouses,
the pools,
and the pools specifically, because something that I loved is, even though that the premise of the game is that there's a war going on and you're the last samurai and you got to go beat this whole army, so much of it was just kind of traveling on your own, and then maybe you find a fox thing, and especially with the baths, those were where the main character kind of goes to meditate, and you choose a thing to think about, and it kind of helped me be mindful of my own life, and I'd be man, I should really take
a bath.
take a
yourself
moment and just
and
like
just
think.
reflect.
And I liked that when you go to do that, the way the bath mechanic works, which was like probably my favorite part of the game, was you would get there. There's this little cinematic of him getting into the bath, and then you choose a thing to think about, which is it's referencing a part of the game. So you're either thinking about your uncle who you're trying to save, or maybe you're thinking about the character you just met. What are you laughing at?
I have a funny thing about the bath thing that happened to me while playing the game.
Gotcha. But sometimes people, when you like go to meditate or go to just like think about your problems, you can be overwhelmed by how many things are going on. And the game really showed me that like, just think about 2 and pick one. And I was like, well, like maybe I should copy and paste this to my real life.
Yeah.
And the game, like, for me, was this very calming experience because that was how I chose to play it. I really dove into the world and the traveling and the mechanics of it in a very kind of like slow burn way. And I loved that about it. And I loved exploring the overworld a lot because it was so beautiful, and like, learning the different like songs on the flute thing and doing the like sword training, like all those little pieces of the game, I feel like meant the most to me. Overall, I did get kind of burnt out because when I would go to do the story stuff, and especially because I'm so completionist, which is, was kind of my downfall with this game, I got like pretty burnt out because I did all the side quests that I could before moving on to a main story beat. And it got to the point where it was like every side quest sort of felt the same. Like at first, loved them. I was like, oh, this is really cool. Like this guy lost his family. This guy's, impersonating a samurai, whatever. And it felt like really interesting. But at a certain point, it was like, how many villagers do I have to go steal your bread back from? And that was sort of my downfall, where it was a little repetitive and I just kind of fell out of it. But I don't think that I'll revisit it. Hopefully I'll finish it at some point. And I do look forward to those things that I said meant the most to me, which were the peacefulness of the game and those kind of reminders to be mindful in the face of so many horrible things going on.
What about you, Dev? What'd you like?
I
Dev probably liked the game more than any of us. For what it's worth.
I think with conversations that we had, I think I liked it the most.
And Dev played the most of it.
Yeah.
Disclaimer.
Yeah. So the thing that I ran into something similar to Big Nick, where I just played the shit out of it and basically burnt myself out of it. And I think when I burned myself out on it, I was shit talking it because I was like, this sucks. Like, why don't I like this anymore? Kind of deal. When it was like, if I liked it, if I didn't like it so much, I wouldn't have beaten the shit out of it. Like
right. I wouldn't have dumped 35 hours into it in 4 days.
Exactly. And honestly, I'm thinking back now. This like thought just popped into my head where, around the 25-hour mark in Last of Us, I was kind of like, yo, I just want to beat this. And maybe that's just like my threshold, is I'm wondering. But also, again, Last of Us was one that I tanked in 3 days as well. Yeah. So I think there's definitely something there to burning yourself out on a game. And so I really had to look, a couple of days ago, I was looking back on my notes, and I was like, actually, I did really, really like this game. And I'll definitely, I got a new TV with like HDR and shit, so I definitely want to like use those graphical enhancements to finish the game. And I also learned a couple of things about the technical aspects that I'll get into later that also make me want to finish the game. But the game starts out, it really just puts you right into the war scene, and this game does a really good job of melding the in-engine cutscenes with pre-rendered, and it really shows in that first cutscene of the game. Like you come out of the first cutscene right into it, and you're just riding down the hill on your horse. Shit's just coming everywhere. The audio is absolutely phenomenal, and it's hard for me to describe in a way, but I actually switched my headphones to my Sennheiser headphones because they're a bit better. Although I usually use my HyperXs for everything else. The audio mix to me made it sound like a movie to me. It's just something about the way it was mixed, just like was more filmic to me, and the way that the game presents itself, the way that it presents cutscenes, how they're shot, also lends to that cinematic atmosphere. And I think that's the thing that they were really going for in this was we really want this cinematic filmic game with the atmosphere, and we'll even, down to the audio, we even want that. And there's just so much that really that brings me into that world and brings me into that atmosphere. the cloud system, the time of day system, which that time of day, they didn't have that in Infamous. Infamous was like a mission based one, whereas this is like real time, time's changing. The cloud cover was always was like super cool in that, and that again lended to that atmosphere that brought me into the game. And you're going out, there's like this lush, beautiful foliage with the wind kicking things up. You have the wind whipping around. You obviously have the wind leading you around as well. At times, especially, could be over dramatic with how the wind was like kicking shit up. But I think that was by design, and it really brought me in and added to that like experience that the world was grounded enough, but I knew that I was playing in like a different world. And that super drew me in, like Big Nick was saying. Open world games, I can't think of an open world game that felt this alive. You obviously get a lot out of like missions, cool set pieces, and characters, but this is the only open world game where I felt that the journey from place to place also felt alive, as opposed to I go through like a Skyrim or a Fallout, like they got cool, they definitely have cool stuff, and I could get a story out of from place to place, but the story and the main story stuff in Fallout came from the characters I interacted with in the missions, as opposed to the actual world really lending itself to that, I felt. And I think it does because the world is so large, which is a positive and a negative for this game, definitely. It lends to varying those environments enough that things felt very fresh to me a lot. And I think that's also why I was playing a lot, because I was like, oh, there's this new thing. Oh, things just there's these new things, and these I'm getting these new looks in just different areas of the world, and it's so big that I know there's going to be more different stuff. And when I went out and explored, there was some new area that looked different than the last thing. I was always being rewarded with these new set pieces, which I can't say the same for in other open world games. And I was definitely super harsh on it, and I think it's tough because it came right on the heels of Last of Us 2. But Last of Us 2 was not an open world game, right? You have like baked in set pieces in comparison, especially when talking about graphical fidelity. You can't compare a game that is level to level to an open world one. It's just not going to match. So they're not. I mean, for sure, there's definitely comparisons that can be had, right? But they're two different games. So I will say that I feel this is more akin to if a talented first-party studio were to do like a Ubisoft-style open game like your Assassin's Creed or an updated Witcher. And because you're just not going to find in an open-world game that type of micro detail that you would find in The Last of Us.
Yeah, I to get back on things that I liked, like I think that there was a lot of great stuff in the game. Like the photo mode for me, obviously, like I'm a sick bitch, and I think the photo mode is like one of the best in any like recent history. And I thought that was really cool. I liked the combat at first, and I think my biggest caveat is everything that I liked at first, I stopped liking after a while. And I think even Big Nick mentioned it, like you like all this stuff until you don't.
That is my biggest takeaway from the entire game, is that everything I love about the game, I also hate about the game.
Yeah, and so I think that is really my biggest problem with Ghosts. Is, and I don't have anything intelligent really to add to the stuff that I like. You guys kind of took all the good stuff. But like it just stopped. Like, okay, for instance, like I know Nick really didn't like the combat at first, and I was like, oh, I kind of like the combat. And then I realized that the combat is more samey than even like the Batman like Arkham games. Like the combat at a certain point is just mash, and like you can
switch styles,
but nothing changes. It's just mash. It's just change the style based on what enemy you're gonna fight, and then mash. Whereas you look at games like Yakuza, when you switch styles, it's a completely different fighting style. Yeah, maybe you're doing spin kicks now. Maybe you're dealing with a weapon. But in Ghost of Tsushima, it's like, this is a spear guy. I need to be in this style to fight him.
Yeah, and once you switch styles, you can just.
It's the exact same combo. Like maybe
input.
Your charge is like a little different. It's
yeah,
like
exactly.
it's like a stab or
something.
Yeah, but it's like, and I think that to me was kind of like, I liked it until I didn't. It's like I thought I was defending the combat. I was like, I think this is fun. And then towards the end of the game, you're like, okay, I know I'm gonna hit triangle. I'm gonna kill 3 people off rip, and then I'm gonna mash. Maybe I'll sneak here, shoot an arrow. But it's like, it was really really samey to me after a while. To your point about the open world, the open world was so not dense to me that it didn't feel alive. Like the environments were beautiful. Like, and there were so many times where I would run to something and it would just be like, holy shit, this is a video game. Like, it's so beautiful. But there just wasn't, to me, there was no pull from like mission to mission, because it's like you run through the woods or through a field, and then you get to a camp that has like 3 buildings that are burnt down because the Mongols were there. So I feel like Ghost of Tsushima is this kind of like, to me, I've said it all along, but I think it would be a better game if it was like a linear story. Just like, I would rather them craft like a beautiful story and use that world to really kind of flesh it out more and give things, maybe give moments a little more impact, or give like details of the characters, you know, things like that.
That's how I felt about the Watch Dogs.
Really?
Like when they first showed Watch Dogs, I was like, man, this game looks awesome. It looks so cool, blah, blah, blah. And then it came out and it was this open world thing. And I was like, I kind of wish this was like a linear
like held my hand more.
story. Yeah, because I just felt like all of the cool things you would have been able to do would have been so much cooler if it was like in these really confined set pieces.
Dev definitely has a point, though. Like, it came off the heels of The Last of Us, and it was just such a different thing. And I think that, you know, many people before us have said this, but it was just like kind of unfortunate timing. Like, The Last of Us was such a beautiful game, so compelling, so succinct. To get into Ghost, and it's like this open world. But to me, it in a way, it felt like the studio's first attempt at an open world game. Obviously, it wasn't with Infamous, but it just wasn't like. It just wasn't. I guess it wasn't what I'm looking for from an open world. Yeah.
I think also Infamous, like, I think this was their like at a fully open, because Infamous was not like was still like relatively, wasn't like completely open world as much as like this or Fallout would be, or like even a Witcher. But I think also like Last of Us was supposed to come out a while ago. Yeah. So I think maybe also bridging that gap, like if there wasn't that gap, that might have helped that as well.
Yeah. No, for sure.
Shit. I was gonna say something to one of your points, but
okay, you go.
Oh fuck.
Unless you want to think, and I'll talk.
Yeah. I forgot. Fuck. The combat. Yeah, the combat. So I still found myself like enjoying the combat, and I definitely even up until where I'm at near the end of the game, I'm still getting my ass kicked by some of the newer enemies, which I. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, at least I'm still being challenged, even though I didn't have to ramp up the difficulty setting. And that honestly just might be something on me. But I think there was a nice medium between, like, although it is a lot like mashing and whatnot, a nice medium between like being completely free and being like a soul's born or something like that. Yeah. But I personally find that the one-on-one battles are much more exciting because they kind of switch up. There's like a limiting mechanic, and it's usually some cool set piece behind it as well. Yeah. And so I definitely find those one-on-one battles to be much more enjoyable. And the combat, probably the worst part about the combat is that you're kind of just fighting with the camera a lot, especially when you get into
that's going to be
when you get into like a camp. Now the camera's getting caught behind some weird thing. Yeah. And also another thing is that, you know, if you could, I think I would enjoy the camera. You'd enjoy it a couple more reasons. Like if I could fix the FOV, that would help out a ton. Yeah. And also the issue is that you can't remap the combat buttons. So now what I'm trying to do is...
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I'm trying to fight with the face buttons, but I also need to move the camera with the right stick. So I have to move my finger off, the face buttons to get to the stick, as opposed to if I was on triggers plus camera.
Just play claw, idiot.
Yeah. Exactly. And there's no lock on, right?
Right.
So that just... Yeah, so it definitely... It's a hit or miss for sure.
I want to talk a little bit more about the open worldness of it and my experience with kind of how I played into that and the alive or not alive topic. The way that I played it was as if I was actually Jin, where because the world's falling apart, right? This is an island that everyone lives on. The Mongols have come and, you know, they're terrorizing it. And if my mission is to make sure all these people are safe, I'm going to stop at every single person and like help them. That was just how I kind of viewed it when I was starting it. And at first I really did love it because it felt alive, and it felt like, man, I'm traveling to a destination, but on my way I'm going to maybe embark on these 3 different side quests that are going to be like pretty rewarding, whether it's in story or in items or in the combat tree thing. But this is how I want to experience it, because I want to live as if this character is who I am, right? And it was cool at first. And like I said before, I got really burnt out because I did all of them. But something else, and I'm gonna pose a question to you guys in a moment, but something else that I noticed is every like town kind of felt the same because they were using the same like buildings. And so I would get somewhere and I'd be like, oh, should I go and see if they need help here? And it would be totally empty. And I'd be like, maybe I was here already, but I don't know about it. Maybe I wasn't, but I haven't procced something in the story to trigger here yet. And so I wonder, like, would you rather have like a huge open world with these repeating settings, whether it's the same like house model? Because I was also exploring every nook and cranny to find items, supplies, whatever. And I'd, spend a few minutes going into each attic of the house and nothing would be there. And it's like, did I do this 20 minutes ago and I'm not realizing it because every town feels the same? Yeah. So would you rather have like this huge open world or a smaller one where things don't repeat so much, but it's maybe not as like huge, so maybe
more
there's
like
less
defined
exploring.
landmarks?
Does anyone answer this question with "I want a big empty open world"?
Right, and I also think of it like this, right? Sean and I have had a conversation about this before. I'm just not. I did really, really like this game, but I'm just not like into big. I'm just not into like huge. I'm not really into huge open worlds anymore. It's just like I don't really often. I mean, I was unemployed at this time, so it was easy enough for me. But on like in a normal sense, like I don't really care about big open worlds anymore. Like, yo, give me a nice, give me a nice like tight linear story, because I just don't have like the time, and. There's definitely people who are going to be like, me 10, 15 years ago, hell yeah, I give this 10 out of 10 because I was an open world stan,
Right.
But now it's I find open worlds to be daunting at times, and that's why also I do think I really did like this game, because as being a person who's kind of less and less a fan of open world because of time and whatnot, I still found myself like wanting to make my way through this. But yeah, it does fall into a lot of those open world tropes where things will repeat, or I talk to this guy and he wants me to, he's like, you talk to this guy to start the mission, you need to go talk to this other guy. And it's just it's just open. That's just open world shit, right? And without this being a completely different game, it's unfortunately gonna be unavoidable. Doesn't make it right, but it makes it kind of unavoidable.
That exact thing was like basically the straw that broke my camel's back in this game, because I remember there were 2 things that made me like actually turn the game off and not pick it back up. One was that where it was like, there's a little blinker on the map or whatever, and I go and talk to him and he's like, hey, like, thanks for coming. Can I like tell you about something? And you're like, sure. And he's like, cool, follow me. And you just walk and there's no dialogue and you get to the other side of town and he's like, and he stands there and then there's a prompt to do the button and you hit the button. He's like, okay, this is the thing. And he tells you to go talk to someone that does the same thing. And so it was 4 times I had to talk to 2 guys. And I was like, this is rough. And then another thing that broke my camel's back was I went on this wild goose chase for a guy, got locked at the bottom of a cliff, walked all the way down the ocean side to like go to where the marker was, and it was at the top of the cliff, but the only way to get to the top of the cliff was where I got down, so I had to walk all the way back and go back up and go to him. And I was like, dude, you're not making me want to play it right now.
Something that Nick said earlier, and I actually didn't even realize this was a problem I had with the game, but you mentioned items. The items in this game are bullshit, because like you find supplies,
just general, just
which is like, what the fuck? That sounds like something they have baked in development and just never followed through with.
Big Nick and I think that they just couldn't.
We literally had a conversation about this early on when we were playing it, which was basically just like development. They're sitting there, they're talking, they're like, what are like a crafting material that like it isn't just like material or like whatever, and they were like, supplies, and someone was like, fuck it, stamped it, we're good to go.
Or maybe like, we'll rename it later, let's use supplies, and it's the working title. But then in literally, we're being kind of hypocrites, because in the HQ Boys fashion, they go, what are we going to call these things? And they're like, supplies.
But the other thing is that I think the important thing to note is that it's an open world RPG. And the hook in every RPG, whether it's fucking WoW or it's Skyrim or it's fucking Final Fantasy VII, is gear upgrades. That is like the hook for all these fucking games. And that hook doesn't really exist in this game.
Yeah.
You get more gear, but
And
like
you can upgrade it, but
you can upgrade it, but it's not like, in Skyrim, okay? Like I think unfortunately we'll probably make a lot of comparisons to Skyrim because it's like the biggest fucking RPG that's ever existed. But like, in Skyrim, I can go to the store and I can buy a sword, or I can do a quest and get a sword, or I can craft a sword or something. In this game, it's like you get the mythic tales, which are the best part of the game.
they are the best part of the game, I think.
And it's like I think that for me, a lot of like the RPG hooks in this game were either not fulfilling or just not really there.
So, as someone that hasn't played Skyrim, how is this different? Because I don't know what you're talking
more
about
of like
exactly.
Think
me,
about,
there were a lot of different things you could do with the items or weapons. Was it just cosmetic in this game? Is that...
Well, yes. It
A
was
lot of-
strictly cosmetic.
A lot of cosmetic, except for like armor.
Yes, and they're just like any RPG has different. I mean, you play WoW, right? Like you get a different weapon every level.
So
And,
you want more than just a sword?
I want something different than just like the sword and then like a different sheath, and that's it.
Okay.
Like,
because you could upgrade it.
Sure, but it feels
Yes,
the
but
same.
Yeah, but
Okay,
yeah,
it's
it does,
like-
yeah, you're still doing like the same combat.
Okay.
But I guess that also lends itself to like how tight would it have been, now we have like more, now we just have like, we're just adding things onto this game.
Yeah.
Is this what we wanted at, like, if this is what you wanted, I'd go to Tsushima for sure.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering if like the tightness would still be there if they were like, oh, now we need to add like axes and maces.
Well, and
but
like, if
I
they're-
wouldn't call the game tight as it is.
No, but if they're trying to be historically accurate or something, maybe they can only do swords, right? Is that...
Yeah, but like there's a bunch of like historical inaccuracies, and it's not like the game is like a set like period piece, you know what I mean? Like you get smoke bombs and fucking all these like explosives and katanas and shit. Like samurais won't run around with that shit.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't even realize until you said it, but the items are such a big part of RPGs, and especially open world ones, because that's like the hook to explore, is to get cooler shit for your guy.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, I felt like the game does this thing, right, where it sets you up, and it's like you can either be the noble samurai or the ghost. And like that's going to really affect the gameplay. No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
And the story actually pigeonholes you into being the ghost.
Yeah, the ghost anyway. There's no.
But
Anyway.
it makes you feel bad for doing it.
But
Which
it
is like-
pigeonholes you into doing it, and there's no real option, and there's no real outcome for doing one way or the other, because there's not like, which I hated, because when it was first presented to you, where the way that they present it to you is like, well, you can continue to be noble, or you can do this like, and I was like, oh, cool. There's going to be like a built-in like almost like Paragon system, right?
Right,
Of
yeah,
like
right, yeah.
of like ghost and samurai.
Or at least like a branching path.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it just never happens.
Yeah, I really hated like the shame associated with doing the coolest parts of the game.
Yeah.
You
It
know,
was
like-
weird. It was weird because
Yeah.
they push you to do it and then make you feel bad about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they tried to.
Like,
and I
why?
think. Oh, I don't know how far you guys. I don't think
It doesn't-
care at this point.
You can
No,
spoil
you can
it.
Yeah,
say
so
Yeah.
I think like they do go over that, and eventually, like, although like you're gonna get pigeonholed anyway because the story only goes one way.
Yeah.
They make you feel, obviously, like in the beginning, they make you feel guilty because I think this could just be completely off the cuff. This is just my own personal canon. They make you feel bad at the beginning because that's how Jin feels about it, because he doesn't know any other way.
Yeah.
But as you progress through the story and get to like Act 2, Act 3, Jin starts to embrace that. And then you're like, yeah, like I've been like, and the people start to embrace Jin as well, even though he's going against his uncle's word. And eventually like that all turns to shit and whatnot, especially like when you get into Act 3 and like everything just gets like, you end up killing the Khan, right? What happens is, but you end up poisoning everyone, and you end up poisoning all of his soldiers and poisoning him, and you kill him, and your uncle comes up and he's like, yo, like the Shogun's not gonna like this, like we gotta fucking arrest you. So like all the people are behind Jin, but his uncle is still stuck in this fucking old thing. And then you're also kind of following along in the story, being like, yo, like this was the right. I felt as if this was the right way the whole time, and so does Jin,
Right?
Because he's basically in this thing where like, yo, like his uncle's way was not getting the job done.
Yeah.
Like they were getting captured, they were getting fucked up, like they got slaughtered at this bridge battle like a day or two before. So Jin took it upon himself. He did it the sneaky way, and they ended up winning. But his uncle and the Shogun were not feeling that way. So that, and I think that's where the story was kind of going with that. Was like you were supposed to feel these emotions because it was gonna open up. Although, yeah, at the beginning, I definitely felt like I was like, I thought there was gonna be some sort of branching thing. But when I got to the point where I'm at, I'm like, oh, like I see. So
That's cool.
it's definitely interesting in that regard, but I definitely like feel where you guys are coming at. Like I was expecting one thing and then got something completely different, but I was like, you know, I thought it was like a delightful little surprise of the way that the actual story ended up turning out. And worst part about the game, they killed the horse.
Oh,
What?
Yeah. The horse
I
gets
will not
killed
finish
at
this
the
game.
beginning of Act 3, and like you have to like go and bury him.
that's
Oh,
really sad.
I'm so happy I didn't get to. I would be bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Now-
absurd. No, fuck.
Now
this
that you
game.
brought up the horse, this is another gripe I have with this game. I think it's got the actual worst horse mechanics
It's bad.
of like any game I've
I
played
really like.
recently.
I really.
There's
like that.
one part of it I like, but being able to jump off of it at max speed
Is fucking
and
is-
then get
It's
hurt.
no, it's,
I know
it's stupid, and like
but
and like Nick was like, he was like, well, I understand because I'm controlling me, not the horse. But in every other fucking game you play, you're controlling the horse.
once
Yeah.
I unlocked the ability to fucking murk someone off the horse, I was heading at everyone at 200 miles per hour.
That's cool.
Something I really didn't like about the horse and kind of about the world, and this is definitely spoiler, like being spoiled by games like Breath of the Wild and stuff. But the game is so vertical, and the wind will lead you to the edge of a cliff.
Yeah, and you're
And-
like, you got to go down.
And there is no, like, you know, I'm not saying you got to put a glider in every game, but like the fact that like Breath of the Wild has a glider, Dragon Quest Builders 2 has a glider,
Well-
Genshin Impact has a glider, like you could do something. And I know that you get a grappling hook, but it's not the same.
No,
Yeah.
and the grappling hook is actively not good in
Oh,
the game.
I didn't even know there was a
Dude,
grappling,
the grappling hook. I thought the shrine grappling hook puzzles are like really good.
Huh.
But the problem with the grappling hook is you cannot use it
Oh yeah, you can't use it anyway.
it is like very specific,
Context.
and it so
Weird.
it like why even have it? Why even have it in the fucking game
Yeah.
when you can only use it on very specific
Yeah.
things?
But in Arkham, can't you only? I mean, I know this is like fucking 15 years ago, but couldn't you only use them on a couple of spots too? Like
But Batman has a glider.
Yeah,
Batman can
No,
glide
and also
wherever.
you can hook onto ledges of like any ledges as long as there's specific ones you can't. But pretty much any ledge in the game.
There's
you
more
can-
that you can.
Right,
than
right.
can't.
I think that I think the biggest problem for me with this game is it is all right. It's not bad, but there's just some stuff where I'm like, why is it like this? Like, why are there escort missions and why are there following missions in this game? And with like the old ass mechanics, like in Yakuza, you know, one of my favorite games of all time, with good reason, when you're following somebody, you just hold R2
Yeah, and it just locks on.
and you just walk with
Yeah.
them. Like, and like that mission where you're rescuing, I don't remember her name, but you're rescuing the woman's brother from the camp, and you have to like stalk the Mongol leader. It was like, if he gets out of your vision for a second, the game's like turning on the alarms
scrambling,
in your
yeah.
house, and it's like you've lost the vision on the guy. And it's like, I see the cursor.
Like,
I
just
know
see
where he
him.
is.
You actually made me realize something. Back to the hook of RPGs is the items thing. It almost feels like they wanted the hook to be all the little stories in the world building. Like if you go and do a side mission, you are fleshing out that person's life, learning about them, learning about their family, learning about how the Mongols have sort of fucked them. But that's one, not as rewarding, like you were saying, as items. And also, there was so much of it that it got samey and like not like the writing wasn't really great. Like I remember doing one of the last missions I did. Someone was like, the Mongols stole my stuff, and I was like,
Yeah, of
okay,
course they did.
and they stole everyone's stuff. She's like, you got to go get it. And I went and got it, and I brought it back to her, and it was annoying because I had to walk 50 meters, and they were sitting on the road, and I just nuked them, and then walked back, and I had done that a million times, so I was like, whatever, here's your bread, and she's like, oh. you know, I lied. And I was like, well, now I feel like, what the fuck is this about?
Yeah,
and
like,
it just, and like every mission was like, oh, you know, they took my thing. I go and get it and bring it back. And it was just like, this, I'm done hearing about it.
You know, I just remember that you reminded me of is the fucking charms. That was like the upgrade hook, and they were so.
I didn't like the charms.
They were so not rewarding. It was like,
Also, I never, ever felt the impact of the charms on my character.
And they wanted you to change them a lot.
I made mine in a specific way that when I looked at a charm, I was like, I'm playing the game like this. Let me add this to my thing, and that's how I felt. It rewarded me.
But I never felt like they were making an impact on my character, or like there no charm did something so effective that like it felt like it was changing the way the game was playing.
You know, it's not like in Skyrim when you put a fucking gem in the sword and it does fire damage now.
Right, exactly.
It's like,
it was like take 2% more damage.
Yeah, like I hardly can tell.
I did unlock the fire sword, so
that's
Whoa.
sick. What I
Maybe
will,
we just didn't
so-
get far enough. But
so
maybe
there was-
the problem is the game is too big and long.
Yes, right. So
yeah, I remember I played the shit out of it.
Yeah.
I played the literal shit out of it.
but
so
if all the best parts of the story or best parts of the game are in Act 3 or
but
the
they're
end
not
of Act
right
2,
because like
I mean, I was
a
halfway
lot of
through
like
Act 2.
I think the main because like all the main upgrades, like the big ones, like the fire sword, the fire sword mission was so fucking cool.
I bet it was.
Again, like this was like a late game one, but basically like there's this like secret samurai, and you have to climb a literal mountain to get to them, but there's like a mechanic where as you get up the mountain it gets colder, so then you have to find like as you're running you'll start getting colder and you start losing life if you're out too long, so you're climbing this mountain, but also you're on the lookout for like fires. Yes, thank you. Fire. I was gonna call them fireplaces.
Fires.
You're on the lookout for like little campsites as you're going up the mountain,
Yeah.
and then finally like you get to the top of the mountain, and there's this dude with like all black armor, and he's not like a bad guy. He's just like, yo, you gotta battle me, and
you gotta fight me
yeah,
now.
you gotta fight me now, and you're gonna learn, and you'll learn the
fire sword.
Yeah.
You'll learn fire
Is
sword.
that a mythic tale?
It's a mythic tale.
Those are the best parts.
The mythic tales are really good.
Sick.
Yeah, but yeah, and there's like I am not opposed to like the little side missions, but yeah, in many open world games, this one included, the payoff for a lot of them there aren't too many that are super memorable. There's definitely one in this game that was like I really held on to, and it just involved like I went up, you know, it's a kind of normal thing like you know, like my wife is missing or something like that, and you kind of go through like their little family story or whatnot, and something had happened with him in the Mongols. He tried to make some sort of deal, and like at the end you like find out like you find his wife's body and it's murdered, but like the way that they got to that point was like was really cool in my opinion, but it's so tough to find. You don't know where to find those missions, and you don't know where they're going to pop up.
Yeah.
Is like where can you find these memorable things?
And there were great little moments. I don't know if this was like a main story quest or a side one, but the mission where the guy was pretending to be a samurai.
That was just a side
that was
quest.
really, and he
so
was
like that was cool.
and like the hoes were like,
Yeah.
oh, like we knew he was
Yeah.
pretending.
Yeah.
He's like,
And so like there is some cool stuff, but I think that it was so, like you said, it's kind of few and far between.
Yeah.
It's hard to find. And like, yes, you know, games like Ubisoft open world games and Skyrim and all these games, there is a lot of fluff to that shit. I think The Witcher is the most egregious out of all of them.
oh,
I love The Witcher.
They got the map icons up the asshole.
That's what made me stop playing the game.
That was really horrible.
Too much.
But I just think that on average you could find maybe because there was more people, so there was a better chance of this happening, but there was just more shit to care about in other games versus this one. Like the mythic tales were fucking awesome. The stories of like the people around you were fucking
like
awesome.
the main, yeah.
But to Nick's point, like that was almost never enough to hook me to want to keep going once I lost interest.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like
I was
And
the same way.
like some of the mechanics and just the way you needed to progress through the game
were frustrating.
were annoying and frustrating. So
Yeah.
it wasn't even worth getting to the greatest parts. And I said a minute ago, I had those two things that happened that made me like not like it. The one where I got trapped at the bottom of a cliff was a mythic quest. So I felt extra betrayed because I was like, I'm doing my favorite part of the game and I'm getting owned.
Right.
Yeah.
So it almost felt like everything can be really sick about this game except for some of the execution of like how to actually play the game.
Right.
Yeah.
So that like brings like earlier I said like everything I like loved about the game I ended up hating about the game. So it's like you start unlocking the stances, right? And I was like, oh cool, this is making the combat more interesting. And now there's a giant fucking skill tree for each stance. And I'm like, all right, okay, like then it's like you unlock new equipment and it's like cool. And now there's a giant skill tree for and I'm like. There's so many different upgrade systems in the game for each little thing that you have that I was like, this is overwhelming. I don't really care.
Yeah, I think the upgrade trees were kind of a pain point for me too because some games have done it so well, right? Like this is not really spoilers for God of War, but God of War has a great skill tree where like you're learning combos, you're getting new abilities and whatever. And Ghost really was like big bodacious, big like bombastic. Here you have smoke bombs now, and then it's like a little. It felt like microtransactions on top of the smoke bombs.
Like on top of the smoke bombs, and then like, you know, the standoff. Right, it's like the first time you do it, you're like,
like, this is the sickest thing in the game.
Fucking awesome! And then before you know it,
You're
first of all you've upgraded it, so now you can stand off like 6 times in a row, and so like every interaction is literally hitting triangle like 4 times and then killing the last guy. And I was like, this is no longer fun or cool.
Right. The game did the thing where they found a really sick thing that they did.
Yeah.
And did it way too much.
Way too much. And then like they even went deeper on that, which was the 1v1 standoff like boss battles, which the first couple I was like, all right, this is cool. You got to like learn their like movements and their. And then it gets to a point where you have enough upgrades where really you can just hit square and triangle. It's like parry at the right time, square, and then you don't really have to learn their movements and their thing. You just wait till it glows and then hit them. Wait till it and then it's just like this is no longer interesting or fun, and I'm bored of it, and I don't like it.
I will say parry mechanics are like my favorite mechanic in any video game because it makes you feel like you're fucking sick.
Yeah.
And I liked it in Ghost. But I felt like the windows were a little weird.
Yeah, they were definitely like, if you weren't, and I actually think this is a good thing. Like, I think it would punish you if you weren't like right on it, which is like that's fine with me.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely, I think, and that's also like why like I still am being challenged by the game even up until endpoint because there are like not maybe like kind of like new enemy types that you run into, but there are and there are more. So now it's just like now you really like in Batman, like you have to like kind of be aware of like all of your surroundings.
Right. Yeah, I did really like, especially compared to other similar games, like it definitely felt really realistic. Like you felt like a samurai until you didn't. You know, until you felt like a superhero.
Yes.
I think the cool thing is that like battle movement is done really well, and the way that they chain the moves together, it was really fluid. And I definitely I felt that they did that animation very, very well. But on the flip side, some of the exploration animations that I ran into kept this game from being like an exceptionally animated game because outside of battle, there was like there's like weird clipping and you would walk up hills and he wouldn't adjust himself. Like, you know how like you're walking up a hill and you would like kind of move your knees up a little bit. He would just walk like normal uphill and then his legs would just clip through the ground and shit and do that upstairs. And it's just like, it's definitely like nitpicky, but like, come on, like
no,
they could have like
it takes you out of the immersion.
I tried to write some of that stuff off as like open world jank, but there's some stuff that's like, I guess the game feels like it's 2 different games a lot of the times. Like it feels like it wants to be a really fucking sick linear game, and then sometimes it wants to be an open world game. And where that shows the most to me is in the facial animations of the main story stuff, which is tough because like it's an open world game, so it can't have great animations all the time for everybody. But don't make me focus on it then.
And they try to make all those parts so cinematic. So many parts of this game are cinematic to like the like almost it looks like a movie title card,
which is one of the coolest fucking things.
It's really
super,
sick, but then
it lends
they
the
just show
atmosphere
like
very well.
a blank face, and you're like, "What's going on?" Could I, unless you were gonna keep going?
Oh, I was just gonna say something about the facial jank was like, I wasn't too like pressed by it because I just was like, okay, like I wasn't expecting this to be Last of Us, but outside of that, like the player models are beautiful. Like the play, like if you, especially like definitely you can see it in like photo mode, but if you really get a good look at the characters, like absolutely beautiful, like the veins on arms, the way that the way that skin reflects light, very good like subsurface scattering, very cool like skin tones and whatnot, and the armor materials like absolutely phenomenal. Just the way that the materials look and just the little accents and everything are really done well on all of the characters. And a very cool thing that I absolutely have to give this game credit for is you can go up to any dumbass NPC, even one that doesn't even talk. You can go up to them and they are beautifully animated, like very, very close to like main character animation. So they definitely, I think that they crushed it on that point for sure. So I can't say that like this game isn't like doesn't crush it in a lot of the graphics fields.
How did you guys feel about not the need, but the kind of the need to change between your samurai armor and your traveler gear?
So
I never would.
I did it every time because so much of my experience was the traveling that I was like, oh, I want to really dive into the traveling here. It was definitely a little annoying that I had to do it, but it was a decision that I made to do. So like, it's my own fault. I'm finding it annoying, but that was just the way I wanted to play it.
I mean, you can find it annoying without having to do it. I thought it was fucking stupid. Like, okay, we get the benefit of like I can find artifacts, or whatever, but like that is a little bit immersion breaking, right? It's like I'm gonna take my armor off, run around like this, and then I gotta fight. I gotta throw my armor back on. It's like, but what I'm actually doing is I gotta fight. I gotta hit pause, equip my armor, get back into it. Like,
fast.
and why not just let me?
Breaks the flow.
I only did armor when I was like going to do a mission or a camp. If I just came across people, I fought as a traveler, basically, which I sort of wrote as like, I'm the ghost and I'm trying to be a little sneaky, and these guys like think maybe I'm just a villager, and then whoop, you're fucking dead.
I did doing a lot of the work for Sucker Punch.
I did Sucker Punch. If you need someone to fix your game,
I did traveler armor for a lot of it because that was a personal choice aesthetically, because I was trying to make my dude look like Jubei from Ninja Scroll, and they had like the hat and shit and everything, so I was like trying to do that. But a lot of the time, if I did switch armor, it would be to the bow and arrow armor.
The bow and arrow are sick.
Yeah.
Did you guys get to the black ink guy?
no.
Okay, so there's a guy in the game. You have to. He's hidden somewhere, but he does black ink dye.
Okay.
So
No,
like
I
ended up like I discovered him and like murdered out all my shit. It was
That's
really,
cool.
it was cool.
That's really cool.
Can I share a couple glitches
Yeah.
that I found that were funny? So one was at a standoff, and it, I didn't see them. It was like up kind of on like a little hill thing, and it just said standoff, and I was like, oh, they got to be somewhere. I'll do standoff. I hit it, and it's, they're doing the whole like camera thing,
Forward,
and they're yelling at me
and
and
the
whatever.
like flutes are playing.
It was like a mile away.
And no, he goes, I just hear, ah! And he comes from around the side of the hill, and he had walked through his campfire, and he caught on fire, which I appreciate. I appreciate that, like, even in this like pseudo cutscene, he's interacting with the world, but he just flails and he's on fire, and he like falls in front of me and dies, and I was like,
That's sick.
okay. And then his boy was like, my turn, and I had to deal with him. But then I have this thing that I typed that I don't remember typing, and I just want to share it because it's funny. Glitch. Big ass turkey lands on guy mid standoff. I cut him and the fucking turkey in slow mo with 2 question marks. I don't remember that,
it, but
I don't remember there really
gonna be
being
honest,
turkeys.
That sounds awesome.
It must have been.
So I just want to talk about the story, which I think is like the last real thing I have to talk about this game. And at first I was like really into the story, and I was like, all right, cool. Like torn, like ethically about what's going on and the moral of the whole thing. Obviously like this has some sort of like real history, like tie, and like, so I was like, this is cool. I'm in. Like, and then, you're talking about your uncle, and then you're still talking about your uncle, and then we're still talking about the uncle. And then I get to one, and I do a bunch of missions, and then I'm doing the thing which probably hindered my play, which was I was like combing the first area
Same.
for all reflecting pools and
trying to get all
whatever,
18,
trying to get all,
like,
yeah.
yeah.
So then I hit like my third reflecting pool in a row, and he's run out of things
To think about.
So it was literally your uncle, and I went, nope, I don't care anymore.
Wow.
I don't care.
I sent a funny photo to the group. I gotta find it.
It went your uncle,
Wow.
and I just went, what the fuck else is going on in this game, man? Like,
So
I don't care anymore.
I'm gonna ask for a spoiler. When do you save him? Because he's trapped in. From what I can
and
understand,
Act 1.
you do save him there.
Yeah.
But you're still thinking about him in Act 2.
You think you're never not thinking about the uncle.
Because it felt like you were gonna go save him at the end of Act 1. Because that's where he's at the building that stops
do.
you from getting to the
You save
second
him
part
at the
of
end.
the island.
And the end of Act 1 is cool. There's actually a really cool story beat in the end of Act 1, which is, did you do the thing with the Ronin?
I think so.
Yeah. And then this guy,
betrays
and he
you.
betrays you.
Oh, I didn't.
That-
know
It's a
that.
really cool.
And it's a really cool scene, and you'd have like a showdown in this like cool like garden pond thing
with like floating lights.
yeah, it's awesome.
Oh, that's
and like that part, I was like, yo, this fucking bangs, and like this is a cool story beat. But then like immediately you save your uncle, and then you're stressed out. Like, does my uncle love me? Is he mad at me? Is it like
he wants you to be.
yeah? And I'm like, oh my
heir.
god, I don't care about like.
The game like did too much for in all departments. Like just trim so much of the fat, make it like a more linear experience, and I think you've got something.
There was
Yeah,
just
yeah, but
there was
then-
just too much talk of the like, am I dishonoring my uncle? Am I like, man? At like some point you got to realize what you're doing, which apparently you do later on. But like, I just didn't have the wherewithal to get to the third
Yeah.
act where you start to realize that what you're doing is right for you and your people. But like, playing 30 plus hours of like being fucking stressed out about your uncle and going to the reflecting pools and having no options other than your uncle, I was like, fuck me, man. I can't do it anymore.
I mean, that's a perfect example of you liked it until you didn't.
Yeah.
Like, they just kind of wore themselves out on it. Damn, I
Yeah, I also
really
just
thought
think
it was
like, I mean, if it wasn't an open world game, it wouldn't be Ghost of Tsushima. So
Right.
that is like,
Well,
I mean, I guess you gotta like think of it like,
you make this argument a lot about different
Well,
things.
no, I'm-
it
it's
could
more
be
of like-
called Ghost of Tsushima and be a linear game.
yeah, but then we would just be, I mean, we'd also just
It
be
would be
having
a
a completely
completely
different
different-
conversation.
yeah,
It
right.
just wouldn't be.
But that's the point. I think we would all like the game.
if it was a different game.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
I guess that's fair.
But my point is that like yes, okay, it wouldn't be Ghost of Tsushima as Sucker Punch envisioned it, but it might just be a good game.
Yeah.
And so like what we're saying exactly is this version of the game is not as good as it could have been if it were a linear game.
Yeah.
And what we're saying is a lot of the issues that we're experiencing with the game would have been fixed by it being a linear
yeah,
game.
Right.
I mean, I think like a lot of like open world bullshit and whatnot like could also be fixed by being like linear, but then like.
But
you know,
the point is that this wasn't a good open world. IMO.
Yeah, I mean, you guys definitely thought so. Like, I'm clearly getting that. I thought it was great. But yeah, no, I hear what you guys are saying. Like, on like definitely like the janky bullshit and whatnot.
I found it. Reflect on saving my uncle or my uncle.
Yeah, it was like essentially I had
Hell
like both of them just said my uncle twice, and I was
crazy.
like,
Okay, man.
Different
what
thoughts
the
about
fuck? I like,
different thoughts
I'm-
about your uncle.
yeah,
I'm very-
like, holy shit, man.
I'm very glad I didn't experience that because that was like my favorite part is like going to the bath and taking a bath.
Well,
and
I was
seeing
enjoying
Jin's
it,
ass.
and then apparently I had
Yeah,
done
dude,
too
it's
many in a
almost-
row
and
without
almost-
doing anything else in between to give him.
I think that was-
to give the game any op. But like at that point, I was like so ground down by the
Yeah.
game that it was like my uncle. I was like, I can't do it anymore.
The game
man.
is
can't
like,
even
bro,
do it.
you're clean.
Yeah.
Stop coming here.
Stop. That's why I think about it.
But I mean, I think we can wrap it up because we're kind of talking in circles. But
Oh, I
overall,
was gonna-
Oh no, go
You got
ahead.
some stuff?
I was gonna
Go.
rock with the technicals.
Okay,
since
yeah,
we're-
yeah.
Yeah,
go
no,
ahead.
do it,
Technical.
do it,
All right.
because you're the technical guy out of the three of us, or the four of us.
Let me just see what we got.
I'm not part of this apparently.
No, you're not.
So
Take a seat.
kind of back to the photo mode in this is by far the most robust photo mode in any game ever. Like
sick.
literally, like you could switch the clouds, you could switch time of day. I don't know if you ever. I would sometimes I play my Bose speakers, so I would hear this if you run the time of day and the fans just start going mental.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just if you end
That's
up picking it
funny.
up again, go to photo mode and just go through time of day, and that shit ramps up, and then the frames drops
That's
to
like,
like
that's
5
really
minutes.
funny.
Yeah.
Like,
Some of the smaller details and whatnot. they did the shadows really well, especially for an open world game. Just like, as the sun cloud cover, everything like that. If you were going through like a forest, they did the shadows very well, very detailed, and even like smaller details, like blades of grass, leaves, did very good. Had very good screen space shadows. If you were looking at them, they were looking bomb. For anyone, screen space shadows, basically they will disappear when the object is not on screen, which is obviously not realistic. Like if we're talking about like ray tracing, which keeps shadows there all the time. That's for another fucking story. Blood system was cool and not super over the top. It wasn't if anyone's ever played Dragon Age, if you've ever done a fight in Dragon Age, your character will actually be covered in blood.
Soaked in blood.
And during the credit scenes, obviously this one's cool because you'll have the bloody fights and the physics with the blood is cool. And then after the battles, you'll see you have little shit all over you. So it's always these nice little touches. And if anyone is playing on, so there were PS4 Pro. I'll touch a little on base PS4, but I have a base PS4?
Me.
Come on.
I have a literal launch. I have a launch day.
Oh my. Okay, then we.
I have a literal launch day PS4.
I'll go
into it.
Slim, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
I've got
okay,
the
so
Slim.
me and you were the only ones.
Yeah,
Okay.
pros, yeah.
All right. So
We're the only graphics whores.
So if you're on PS4 Pro, you've got two options. You've got quality mode and you've got the performance mode. If I'm going to talk shit about the game, this is where I'm going to talk shit about it. Performance mode, quality mode was dope. So what it did, it ran at 1800p, which is pretty good. Where obviously we're looking for 4K and whatnot. 4K would be 2160. So it ran at 1800p with a sort of it used for graphical fidelity, usually for GPU help, they'll use this thing called checkerboard rendering, in which the way of just rendering frames. This one did very well at that. You could only really notice it if you looked at hair strands and shit like that. So they did a very good job at doing that, keeping it at 1800p, and it wasn't a dynamic resolution, so it would keep that 1800p, which is nice. And they capped it at 30, and it did a very good job at staying at 30. You could notice dips to 25, 28, but usually only big battles. So they definitely did a good job at holding it at that. For whatever fucking reason, the performance mode, what they did was, again, capped at 30. But what performance mode did was held it at 30 the whole entire time. But the sacrifice that was made is they bumped it all the way down to 1080p, which quality mode held 30 at 1800 so well. I didn't feel like they needed to beat the shit out of it all the way down to 1080p just to hold it at 30, when they could have bumped it down 1080p and gave us 45, 60. Maybe if they had a little VSync or whatever, keep it at unlocked frame rate and just let us have that nice smooth motion, because Infamous had an unlocked frame rate. So I thought that was just kind of fucking dumb. So if you're gonna play it, just play it in quality mode. I don't think there's any point to play it in performance mode. Literally, it brings it down to 1080p, and then it brings all the menu elements down to 1080p as well, so everything looks kind of blurry and ass. So if you're listening to this, quality mode is the way to go. Base PS4, always at 1080p, but it did a pretty good job at holding. Usually, it did a very good job at holding at 30 on PS4, on the base PS4. It would dip down 25, 28 again, in the quality mode, but I would say generally 99% of the time usually would hold up on PS4. So that was a nice little thing that they would do. If there was I don't know if I would buy an outright PS5 upgrade, but if there was a backwards compatibility upgrade that would give me a 1440p 60 or a 4K 60, I would definitely run it through again, for damn sure. And another thing that they did very well, which is definitely big for open world games, is the fast travel was very fast.
It was really fast.
Super fast.
Yeah, if you died, you get right back into battle, very fast, usually 5-10 seconds. Even the farthest traverses of fast travel would only be 10-15 seconds. But for the most part, I would clock it at 5-10 seconds for fast travel. So they definitely did a good job in that aspect, I just think like the performance mode is dog shit. Why would you do that?
Did you guys do fast travel for a lot of stuff?
Yeah.
Eventually, like and
when you're going to
yeah.
do something that's 1.9 kilometers away.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. And like
I never used
especially if I had already explored the map to that point. Like,
was that a conscious decision to not use it? Of course it was.
Yeah,
That's
I would-
the most Nick
yeah.
Lawler thing I've
Yeah,
ever
I would,
heard.
I would only if in between my waypoints, if I hadn't explored the map, I would. But if I had already explored the map, I'd just
Yes,
flash.
that was my mindset.
That's fair. I didn't get to a point where I hadn't explored everything, so
I got to a point where I had like discovered the whole first act map area, but then it would be like you talk to someone and then it would be like, oh, you got to go to the south, and I would just fast travel to the
Fast
like,
travel in open world games is like my fetish. I
Yeah.
don't want to waste time because
Yeah.
the game's already gigantic.
Yeah.
right.
You know, like,
But
I
then
don't
it's
need
like Witcher and shit that would take like a minute and a half. Like
Yeah.
that shit sucks. So I'm glad like we're starting to figure that out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
I would be interested to hear because you say like at the end of your playthrough you weren't enjoying it, but now looking back you enjoy it. I would love to know if you went home and picked up this game right now, how long you could play it for.
Yeah, I mean, I'll try and here's what I'll try and do. I'll give like a mini update. I'll try and run it.
Once you get your TV set up.
Yeah, maybe like Friday night or like Sunday.
Yeah.
I'll try and run it and see. We'll see
Yeah, see how long you play for
Because
before you're
I
like,
also
yeah, I'm done.
here's my issue though. This is why I won't pick up Breath of the Wild ever again, because I feel like I would need to start. I don't think I've been away from Ghost this long that I'll like be like completely, but there's definitely something about picking up a game and like not having that muscle memory anymore.
Yeah.
And like wanting to start it from the beginning so you kind of build your skills up as opposed to like trying to figure it out at where you're
Also
at
in
the
an open
at the
world,
most
like
difficult.
remembering where you've been, what
Yeah.
you did. What,
I mean, this has like a lot enough like the way that they do waypoints and whatnot. Like they kind of just like mark them off,
Yeah.
so that's
No.
like, usually easy enough. But yeah,
I think it's good.
Well, overall, I think we're all comfortable saying the game is
I think it's a good game.
It's good. Would you suggest somebody to play this game?
Sure.
I would like if you don't have. I wouldn't say if you. There's definitely like games that I would play this over. I mean, I guess it depends on like what your log is looking like right now. I would say
If somebody
suggest
came up to you and was like, "Should I buy this game?"
yes.
See, I specifically told Kesh to not buy it because I was like, I just don't. I think there's better games you could play.
If
right
it was
now.
on like some sort of sale,
Yeah.
and
Also-
people were like,
yeah.
"Yo, it's on sale right now,"
Also,
would you be like, "Yeah,
I
you
think
should
it's
buy
also
it."
you
Yeah,
have to
yeah.
take it into our consideration. Do you still like open world games?
Yes.
Yeah.
For
I mean,
sure.
dude, I love Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I love Breath of the Wild. I love The Witcher.
See, I don't anymore. So I think it's since I don't anymore, and I did like this. I think that's why I can't.
I'm like
suggest it.
actively counting down the seconds until I can play Elder Scrolls 6.
And Cyberpunk.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
excited for
yeah.
Cyberpunk. I just hope it doesn't run into like the open world syndrome for me, where I'm just like, I have so much shit. I got so much shit to do, like in Ghost and Witcher and every open world thing.
We have a question from the crowd.
Yeah, would you buy a sequel?
yes. I
Maybe.
Probably not.
I think I would have to do some research and know that certain things were addressed.
Yeah, I don't think
Yeah.
I'd buy a day one
Yeah.
like I did this time.
I would wait for reviews. If
but I
people said
think
it was
I would-
great, I would do it. Like I was actually thinking about that earlier, because like, what's the next thing that Sucker Punch is going to make? Would I buy it?
It would probably be they're probably doing a sequel to this game. It did very well.
Yeah, that's a really good question, but I would not buy it just based on the principle of this game. I would definitely want to hear people be like, it's actually quite good.
I would also need to finish this game to consider that because I want to know, like, am I invested in the story enough for a second one? And I don't know how it ends right now. And, you know, right now I feel like I could go back and I think play it in small chunks over time. But knowing more about what the sequel would be like, do I want to have that same experience that I didn't love? Or did you address everything and it's like maybe more what I'm looking for now? And I still am invested in the story.
Yeah, I would just have to see like what changes they made.
Maybe. And I didn't really answer what I recommended, but I think I would ask some questions to the person asking me, like, well, what are you looking for? and then let them know, like.
But this is, you always have these caveats, like just off rip. Would you
Yeah.
recommend this game to somebody?
At $60, no. If it was on sale and someone was like, "Yo, it's on sale, should I get it?" Yes.
Like think about games that you love, right? Like
Yeah.
like you would recommend people buy 3D All Stars, right? You like, well, actually, I guess you had kind of a tough time with 64.
I wouldn't.
But
Dev wouldn't on the technical.
but I'm saying without
there are games that I love that I would recommend for people
right,
to play.
like
of course. Sure.
without catering. Like, would you
Yes.
like it? It's
Like Todd.
Sure.
No, I mean,
okay,
yeah,
like,
there's definitely.
would you suggest The Last of Us Part 2?
Yeah.
To anybody
Yeah.
who beat Last of Us Part 1, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, right.
100%.
But this game, you've got trepidation.
This game, I got to think about it.
Which I think means no. But anyway, overall, I think we're all comfortable saying it's a good game. Play it at your own risk if you think it sounds fun. For next month's Screen Peek, I think we've all agreed we're going to do Hades, which is a much smaller game.
Smaller, different kind of game because
different
we
kinda
did two
game.
like
Big
A
story.
massive
like
PlayStation.
massive game,
We
yeah.
gotta give love to somebody else.
Yeah.
So if you guys want to play along, you can cop Hades in the Epic Store.
I think it's
with
like on sale.
Yeah, you get a Rocket League coupon. You download Rocket League, $10 off, $50, or it's $25 on the Switch. So play along with us. Thank you guys so much for everything. This is obviously a show funded and created by you guys. We love playing games with you and talking about them. And if this one was too much of a bummer, sorry, but I promise we're gonna love Hades because most of us already love it. Half
I
of us
haven't played
already
it
love
yet.
I haven't played it yet.
Guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you guys so much for supporting us. If you want to tell people about the show, remember, you guys get early access to this on Twitch. Subscribe for $5. You get early access to this show, the big show, pilots, any behind the scenes that we're working on. If you don't want to sub on Twitch because you're too scared, you can go to onlyfans.com/thehqboys.
I love being too scared to sub on Twitch.
If you don't want Twitch showing up on your credit card bill,
but you,
Yeah.
OnlyFans is your
OnlyFans,
place.
baby.
That's what I'm saying. $5, and we'll see you guys next month. Peace.
Peace.